Welcome back to my channel, Thrive, Don't Survive. Today we have a very special guest. Her name is Suzanne Greiner. Oh my God, my accent is up the roof today. Suzanne, how are you? Please introduce yourself.
I'm doing really well today. Thank you. I'm Suzanne Greiner. I am a nurse. I've been a nurse for 26 years. And I recently have started coaching women in the perimenopausal space just because of my own personal story. Hopefully, we have time to go into that today. But I'm also a mom of three teenagers. So as I was going through the start of perimenopause, I also have teenagers going through all their hormonal changes too, so it's been delightful. But I live in Colorado, and yeah, I just have been going through a lot of different transitions in my life, and going through perimenopausal stuff as well as transitions with I went through a divorce 7 years ago, and just trying navigating life after that. So that's kind of a good summary of kind of what brings me here today. So.
Well, thank you so much for being here. And I love that we're talking about women's health because it's like nobody talks about it. There's no data there, or it's starting to be a thing,
Yeah.
our hormones affect us. Like I don't know how your kids are, but I was one of those teenagers that the hormones controlled them. Like
Mhm.
I had the worst hormonal impact. Like I was going crazy over everything and I felt so depressed and so up and down. Like a day I was gonna be great, the next day I'm like the worst person, I want to kill myself. The other day I'm sad. The other day I'm popular. It was just a complete chaos.
Yes. And so that chaos that we have in our teenage years, that unbalance, hormone fluctuations that are going on, we finally get to this nice kind of zen, like adulthood. And then the same chaotic things happen to us towards the end of our, reproductive years, in the perimenopausal, menopausal state. So yeah, so just hang tight. It can be chaotic.
This is so crazy because I was going to ask you. Well, first, I of course want to hear about your story, but I also want to know all about perimenopause because I know nothing about it. Like this is the first time I hear that I'm going to have another teenage crisis.
I know. And I think that's the thing is, right now in the US, I really feel like there's this huge movement going on right now of really educating women and empowering women to advocate for themselves, especially when it comes to their perimenopausal and menopausal health, where it was silenced for such a long time. And not a lot of people, they just kind of like accepted this was the norm. And they realized, no, like I think for Gen Xers and millennials were like, we're not going to roll over. Like, we're going to speak up and we're going to talk about it. So, the great thing is there's a huge movement going on. And I think women are going to start becoming more educated in the space, which is so important. So,
And I love that. I love the consciousness of our
mhm.
generation and how we're changing things. And for example, for me, I changed the birth control pill
Mhm.
to just an app with a device and like it takes your temperature in the morning and all that, and it works. Like I'm not going.
That is the newest trend for a lot of millennials are like, or even even on the younger side of millennials are like, they're no longer using birth control. There are a lot of side effects. And so I think, people are becoming more conscious, like you said, and really like advocating for their bodies a little bit more and really becoming educated and like doing more of those natural resources, like using an app. So that's
Yeah.
wonderful.
And it's not to take out how birth control was amazing, revolutionary for us, and how we started working from being able to have birth control and not kids all the time. So it
Right.
was a great thing. But right now we have more data and more things of relating it to cancer and to mood swings and to lack of libido. And, for me, I didn't feel like myself. Uh,
Right.
on it forever. And, I also had PCOS and I had
Exactly.
insulin resistance and all these things that it was supposed to be good for. And then it actually, when I stopped it and I started to work on my nutrition and hormonal nutrition, which now is
Absolutely.
a thing, which wasn't a thing before, and working out and all that, I reverted all that. So
Absolutely.
I love it. I love that we're in this movement and we can work
Yes.
to educate other people too in this podcast. So yeah, tell us about your story and how you became or transitioned from nurse to a coach of premenopause.
So about 3 years ago, it was post-COVID, post-pandemic years, and I went on a hike. I'll tell you the story about how I became a nurse coach. But I went on a hike with one of my friends that we used to work in the ICU together, intensive care unit together at the hospital. And she moved away and moved back. And then we went on a hike and she goes, Suzanne, you have to check out nurse coaching. And I'm like, I don't want to coach nurses. Like, that's just not my thing. I've worked, 26 years as a nurse, like I said earlier, and I've kind of transitioned into like healthcare IT. So I do more of the remote work from home, the kind of avenue for, what I do day to day. And then she presented this idea and she was like, no, Suzanne, this is what we went into nursing for, to really educate people and coach people on their wellness, on getting healthier. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that just intrigued me because after I think the pandemic, we're more focused on our overall well-being, our body, mind, and spirit, not just one area of our disease diagnosis or whatever it may be, but we're looking at the whole person. And so I started, I went through the certification process to become a board certified nurse. And I started working with women, middle aged like myself, just working through transitions in life. I was looking at like different people, different women that are like having teenagers at this point in their, life, midlife, and they're less, dependent on the moms, and the moms are kind of losing their identity a little bit. But then I also found out there was a component too of like hormone dysregulation happening and obviously perimenopause. And so I was kind of coaching women in the space. And then I start having these odd symptoms. And it was just like very subtle at first. And it was just one sign and another symptom. And I just kind of played it off. And it was just like, oh, okay. But I just wasn't feeling myself. And that's the key words for women going through perimenopause, is like, they just don't feel like themselves.
Okay.
And I noticed I was starting to gain weight. And I realized I'm like, wait, like I haven't changed my nutrition. I haven't changed my activity. I'm still an active person. I'm still eating really good foods, but I was gaining weight. And then I also had this extreme joint pain. I was just like, what is up with me? I was 47 at the time. I feel like I'm 87 when I wake up out of bed. And I was like using the handrail going down the steps because I was in so much pain and just like, oh, it was so much inflammation in my body. And then I was in a meeting and had extreme brain fog. I thought I was going to get fired because I couldn't pour my words together. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they're going to think I'm drunk because
Yeah.
I'm not like making any sense. Like nothing was making sense. And of
Wow.
course, I was just like, if this is what dementia feels like, this is awful. And that's when I started looking at all my symptoms. I'm like, oh my goodness, I think I'm in perimenopause. And as a nurse, I feel like nurses, we have that advantage of knowing how to work the healthcare system a little bit because we've been around. We know like how to work it a little bit. We know how to really, navigate the healthcare system. So I'm like, okay, let me try and start doing a few things. And I finally got to my yearly. So I did a lot of things I could do on my own. Like I started exercising differently. I started eating nutrition differently. I started taking a bunch of supplements just
Mhm.
so I can start functioning as a mom. And then my son is going to be 19, and then I have two teenage daughters, and they're also going through their menstrual cycles at the same time. And so we were like so irritable at each other because we're just like nitpicking because I had changes in my mood and everything. I went to my yearly doctor's visit in December, and I was armed and ready. I had a list of 17 different symptoms that are related to perimenopause. And just for your information, we can have there's over 70 different symptoms that are all related to perimenopause and menopause. And they can be disguised as other things. So women often during this time frame can be misdiagnosed and over medicated for the wrong things. So that is a huge thing I think for women to know, is that they can be misdiagnosed for other things when really it's symptoms of perimenopause. Obviously, they should get those symptoms checked out to make sure that's nothing,
Of course.
major. But So I walked into my doctor's appointment for my yearly visit, armed with these 17 symptoms listed on my notes app on my phone. And she walks into the exam room and she goes, "How are you doing?" I said, "Well, not so great. I think I'm in perimenopause. I have 17 different symptoms." And she knows I'm a nurse. She's worked with me for a few years. And she's like, "Oh, okay." She goes, "Well, are you still having your menstrual cycle?" I'm like, "Yeah, I still have it. It's kind of irregular at times, but I still have it."
Mhm.
And then she's like, "Are you having hot flashes?" And I said, like, out of all those 17 symptoms, not one of them is a hot flash. And I
Right.
think super important because that is kind of like that gold standard symptom. Like you're going through perimenopause or menopause when you have hot flashes, but it's so much more than hot flashes.
Right.
And so I told her, I'm like, "No, I'm not having any hot flashes." And she's like, "Well, either we can spend this 20 minutes that I have with you right now to talk about perimenopause, or we can talk about your yearly appointment, but I don't have time to talk about both." And like, I was like, yeah, my,
Oh,
the color like left my face and I start tearing up because I was just like, "You've got to be kidding me." I'm like, and I told her, I'm like, "I'm miserable right now." And I'm
yeah.
like, "I need to find something because I am not myself and I'm like miserable right now." And she's like, "Okay." So she started kind of going through some of my symptoms that I had, and I had new increased anxiety and the brain fog, which I talked about before. And she goes, "Oh, I can put you on an anti-anxiety medication to help you with your new onset anxiety, and it may help you with your brain fog." And I looked at her and I said, "Absolutely not." I'm like, "You're not going to prescribe a medication that's covering the symptoms of perimenopause when the root cause of all my symptoms, it's perimenopause and the fluctuation, the chaotic mess of my hormones right now." And she refused to do any hormonal function or hormonal lab testing because I was still having my menstrual cycle.
Wow.
And I've had some functional medicine training in the past, so I knew like the root cause. We get to the root cause. Let's not, medicate for the symptoms.
Yeah.
So I leave that appointment. I get in my car and I start crying because I was just like, "I'm a freaking nurse and this is how I was treated. If I
Crazy.
was treated this way, how many thousands of women have been treated the same way? And they think that this is how their life is supposed to be for the next, 5 to 10 years, or maybe even the rest of their life." And I made a promise to myself that I never want another woman to feel this way ever again, leaving a doctor's office. And so like I like had this increased passion to educate women on perimenopause, help them through their journey of perimenopause and menopause, help them become advocates for themselves, and then also just to create a community of women that feel supportive. So like from that day forward, like it's been this beautiful unfolding of events in my life, and it's just I've met some amazing people along this journey. So yeah, that's my story. That's why I became passionate about this place. And I think it's like when you go through something personally, you don't want another person to go through the same thing.
I love that. That's such a powerful story and it gave me the chills. But that's crazy because it's crazy that for here you have to call it functional medicine to be about the root. But I'm from Venezuela and over there the doctors look at the root, not the symptom, which is weird to me that here is like that. Like I'm so passionate about or against that, because I've been through that too. Like I have my functional people and I have the doctors and I go and they gaslight me and it just makes me be like I'm not gonna come anymore. Like
Right,
I don't,
right.
what are you getting out of this? Like with just money? Because
Okay.
you
I
know,
mean, we can go down a whole rabbit hole because it's definitely, I've worked in medicine long enough to see like where it used to be like, patient was the center of the care. I worked for a top medical facility in the US. And when I first became a nurse, and like the patient was the center of the care. And
yeah,
then through a lot of the policy changes, insurance changes, like all these different things that have happened in American healthcare over the last 26 years, it's no longer the patient being the center of the care. It's more like, okay, the insurance is dictating how we do this. And the insurance is telling the doctors, you only have this much time to spend with your patients because, we're only going to reimburse you for this amount. So it's really changed from the patient-centered care into more that, unfortunately, a business model. So
I didn't know that. I love that you're in my podcast because now we have it. But I do really want to know what did you do to calm your symptoms and become
Mhm.
yourself again?
That's been a huge journey. When I started diving in, like I love education. I love educating myself about things, love diving into the research. It was very easy for me to be like, oh, this supplement or this is going to help me over here. And then it was just this chaos of like, what can I find that's going to help me feel better? What's going to help me like, regulate my nerve, not, at that time, I was like, I didn't think about regulating my nervous system too much. I was just like trying to find a solution. And
Right.
I see so many women, they're like, I just want to feel better. I'm going to do whatever solution. I'll pay whatever I need to pay just to feel better, which as women, we need to be careful because now a lot of people are noticing that this is a huge billion-dollar industry for companies to kind of market towards these women. So we really have to be mindful as women to really, understand our research because there are a lot of people kind of taking advantage of women right now. And like, I feel like women, we've kind of been taken advantage of this whole life or our whole life, like the beauty industry, like this. So some of the things that I did, I found out like I do best when I'm in nature. I knew I needed to regulate my nervous system when it came down to it because it was like this big chaotic mess of like trying to find solutions. And then I had to slow down a little bit. And it was actually, I went on a retreat to Costa Rica and I was having a conversation with one of the ladies that she's like, we're the same age. And she was telling me a story because at that point I was like diving into all this stuff. She was telling me the story about her mom going through menopause. And it struck a chord with me because at that point I was like telling everyone and their mother that I'm going through perimenopause and this is like the struggle and like it became my identity.
Right.
And so she said to me, she goes, yeah, I remember my mom struggling through menopause and it became her identity. And like when she said that, I was just like, oh crap, I'm doing the same thing. So
Mm.
then I like had to do this big self-evaluation and really like, okay, what do I want my perimenopausal journey to look like? Do I
Mm.
want it to become my identity or do I want it to be, a different view? And so I really had to like be completely honest with myself. I had to set my ego aside. Like I feel like the ego gets in the way so easily. Had to set it aside and just like, what is it that I want? And like really kind of hone in, what do I want the next, few years of my perimenopausal journey to look like for me
Mhm.
personally? So then I can help other women. Because I can't help women unless I personally have gone through that journey myself to really understand it. But that's when I'm like, I do really well in nature. For me, I love nature. It grounds me. I do a lot of hiking. I do a lot of walking. That really gets my mind kind of set for like calmness because you can have increased anxiety during perimenopause and it just kind of help reset me and to help me like kind of move forward a little bit and to trying to calm my nervous system down and really to take advantage of these resources in front of me.
Right.
So
That's awesome. Yeah, I can relate to that. I go to the beach here,
mm,
recharge or nature too. I even have a mat that's like grounding with the grounding energy, and it has helped so much. Sometimes when you're like in high stress, nothing helps, right? So
right, right.
there's nothing you can do. You just go easy on yourself and and act, right?
Yeah.
Start acting. But yeah, I think grounding is really helpful and mindfulness and having a nervous regulated nervous system is key to everything, to happiness, to not being brain fogged, to being less triggered, to being
Mhm.
good to your daughters and your sons and all of it, to be a good worker, etc. So I really agree with that one. Um,
Right.
and so after you went through that and you went to nature and then your symptoms started and you changed your intention about your menopause and didn't make it your identity. So then what happened?
So eventually I was able to get lab work done. I was like searching for like some answers because I'm a numbers person. So I love to see my numbers, like especially when it comes to the lab work.
Hmm.
And so I went, and I did find a provider online that was able to like test my lab work. I did get started on hormone replacement therapy because I was deficient in some areas. And so I started, let me just try this out to see if it would help. So that was March, I started hormone replacement therapy, and I've just added a few others. And so I am like night and day difference, 180 degrees difference, like for me, like, and that's like, this is my story. Like everyone's perimenopause and menopause story is so different. Like we go through it at different degrees. So like some people may not even have any symptoms, and others will have a ton of symptoms. But the body is always wanting you to get into homeostasis. And so it's going to give you signals or symptoms if it's done as much work as it can to get you into homeostasis. And when it's not into homeostasis, what's that?
What is homeostasis?
Homeostasis is that balance. So say you have an infection, and so your white blood cells are coming in to fight that infection. So it wants to get you back into that balanced state. And so it's going to, fight that infection to feel better. So that homeostasis is just getting you back into balance. And so when your hormones are dysregulated during perimenopause and menopause, your body's in this imbalance.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of things can happen. Your insulin, your blood sugars can be elevated more. Your cholesterol can be elevated because it's wanting to, like, cholesterol is the building block of your hormones. So it really wants to get your, because there's a lack of estrogen in your body, like it's going to increase your cholesterol to kind of build that up a little bit. So your body's doing a multiple of things. So it is a chaotic mess during this time frame, is kind of what we refer it to.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very easy for your, nervous system to be dysregulated. But also during this time frame, I started the hormone replacement therapy. And then I kind of like within a few weeks, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm noticing these subtle changes back to normal again. And like for me, like this was helpful. Not all women can feel this way right away, but for me, it was enough to like calm the chaos a little bit and be able to like, function appropriately and have like different, I could actually go to sleep better. I could, have a meeting and not like have brain fog, or, I had more energy, and that was huge for me. So
What's
it started, oh, go ahead.
the hormonal replacement therapy? How does it work?
So we have women and men have three hormones. We all have estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone at varying levels. Obviously, men have more testosterone than women. Women have more estrogen and progesterone, and we still have testosterone. So each one of those hormones, they play in different factors. They do different things. But we have estrogen. We have hormone receptors in every single organ system in our body. So when one area of your body is experienced, or when we're losing that estrogen, we could feel it in our joints. We can feel it in our, with the brain fog, because we have those estrogen receptors throughout our whole entire body. So when you have that replaced, when you have that, level brought back up again, where it's deficient, then you're like, oh, I can function better again. But I think the main thing for women is that, when we lose this estrogen, we lose this testosterone, and we lose the progesterone, it really affects our longevity long term. So it's not just like in this, short period of time. It's like what you're doing right now is affecting your 85-year-old body. So how active are you going to be at 85? Because starting at age 40, women, we start, or I think men do too, but mostly women, we lose 1 to 3% muscle mass per year after the age of 40. And we also, during our perimenopausal years, we lose a significant amount of bone density too. So we really don't want to lose our bone mass. We don't want to lose our muscle mass. We really want to keep that up, because at 85, we don't want to be frail and in a nursing home bed. We want to be down on the floor playing with our grandkids and be able to get up and like move around. So longevity is so important. And I think that's the key that really, like, once I understood, like, it's not just for me today and for me to feel better today. It's like looking at my whole lifespan. When I turn 85, how is that going to look like for me?
So what do you do when you do the hormone replacement? Like
Oh, sorry.
no, you're good.
Yes. I started talking about the hormones, and then I got like on that. So I actually take progesterone as a oral, as a pill. I take that at night. That I didn't think I was sleeping. I thought I slept good. And then I started taking the progesterone at night, and I slept so well. The quality of my sleep was so much better. So progesterone is that calming hormone that we have. So it's kind of like the nice calming hormone. So when I was more anxious. I needed my progesterone was low. And so once I started taking progesterone, my anxiety came down.
Mm,
The other thing I do is take estrogen is in different forms. So you can take it as a pill, you can take it as a cream, you can take it as a patch. There's even like a ring that you can insert in your vaginal area as well. Um, Mine is what I take as an estrogen patch, and that's systemic. So the cream and the ring is they're not as systemic as the pill or the patch, but I do take a patch, and then I do take testosterone injections. So you can take that. You could there's a couple different forms that you can take testosterone as a cream and as injection. It's there there's only one FDA use for that's approved for women for testosterone. So you kind of have to um, find a provider that can actually prescribe it for you. That's the biggest thing with testosterone. Estrogen and progesterone are FDA approved for women. Testosterone, you have to. It's a little bit trickier. So
okay. And like, so all of the changes you have to, is it with your tests that they define what hormones they give you, or everyone gets all three?
So no, so and this is the controversial stance right now. So there is no clear test right now available that says you are in perimenopause. So we really like providers really look at your symptoms, but during this time frame during perimenopause, your hormones can fluctuate a lot. Like
Hmm.
one day that you can have a lot, a few days later you can bottom out. Like it fluctuates day to day. So, or even, month to month. So it's really hard to do that. But a lot of it's based on symptoms. A lot of times they will test for lab work. But once you are on the hormone replacement therapy, they will monitor, especially if you're on testosterone, they will monitor at different intervals just to make sure it's not too high or if they need to adjust anything. Because again, perimenopause, you're kind of all over the place. So just trying to have that nice, even balance. And I'm on a very low dose, and the low dose is working great for me. Women, like everyone's going to be different. So, but yeah. But there, I think the main thing to know about hormone replacement therapy, like there's also some controversy behind, taking hormone replacement therapy. A lot of misinformation out there. A lot of studies still need to be conducted to have the appropriate results or whatever. So there's a lot of information out there right now that can be misleading, but everyone, I think women just need to be well informed, need to have a conversation with a menopause or perimenopausal provider so that they have the great, they can make an informed decision and really advocate for themselves. But at the end of the day, like everyone's going to experience it differently. And so hormone replacement therapy may work for me, but it may not work for you or whatever, or, just different things. But there are like certain things that you can do without being on hormone replacement therapy that can help you with your longevity too. So,
Okay, like what?
um, the first thing is foundation is nutrition. Like nutrition is key. Like that is like whenever I talk to my clients, we talk about nutrition first because we are like making sure that you're at the cellular level, you're getting the right nutrients to actually have your cells function, the mitochondria function in the right way. So women during this time frame, even in midlife, even in your 30s, you should be eating protein. We get tired of hearing protein. But the main thing is fiber. We as Americans don't eat enough fiber in our diet. A lot of fiber has been stripped from our foods, especially processed foods. So
Mhm.
if we can get 30 grams of fiber a day, that's ideal. And then also probiotic foods like kombucha, kimchi, sauerkraut, because your gut goes through a lot of microbiome changes during this time frame too. So having those definitely help your blood sugar regulation during this time frame. You become more insulin resistant. So doing things like the glucose goddess on Instagram, she coined the term never eat a carb naked. It
Mhm.
is so key during this time frame because we become more insulin resistant. So if we um, basically eat a carb with a fat or a healthy fat, fiber, or protein, it doesn't spike your blood sugar as high and it kind of maintains that blood sugar at a even balance and it keeps you fuller longer. So you're not going to be snacking as much. And then also the other thing to do during this time frame is, making sure you have omega-3 fatty acids or the Mediterranean diet, anti-inflammatory foods. Those are all super important during this time frame. So it's just those whole food. Maybe some people are even more gluten sensitive during this time frame because their gut microbiome changing. Maybe even gluten free if that's, if you're having some digestive issues. A lot of these things can happen. Like just that nutritional layer is the first foundation thing. The second one would be your exercise. Exercise is completely different during this time frame. We're used to cardio as we're younger, but as we age, we actually need to do more strength training. So really transitioning into that strength training. Maybe you're walking more than you were before, instead of running, but really getting into that strength training. The third thing is your stress management. We become less stress resilient because our estrogen levels are lower during this time frame. Our stress resilience is not as where it was at before. So this is where maybe going into yoga, meditation, nervous system regulation techniques are so important during this time frame. I do a lot of grounding, like I said, grounding, nature are super helpful. Meditation is helpful. Sometimes like with my brain fog and forgetfulness, I'll be in a meditation, like my thoughts are going over here, but really finding ways to regulate your nervous system and your stress management during this time frame is so key because we don't have what we used to before to have that resilience with our stress. So finding those key things to really help you out during this time frame. Sleep is so important. So if you can make sure that you can get sleep, that's going to help you with the weight gain. It's going to help you with your stress management. It's going to help you with your nutrition. And it's so many different things, so helpful with sleep. But at the same time, women experience hot flashes. They experience night sweats. They experience restless nights sleeping. So it's really kind of like getting into that good sleep routine to be able to have good quality sleep. So you really have to play into that more. So those are kind of like the four key things. There's obviously some other ones, but those are the four key things.
I love that. That's exactly the four things that I teach in my program.
Oh, oh, good. Love it.
It's for premenopause, but for me, it's like it's been like that forever. So I guess like I've had not forever, but I think I've had hormonal imbalance my whole life, which we didn't know about. So my weight would always fluctuate. I would go like 20 pounds over, then 20 pounds down all the time, all the time. And instead of looking at or we did try to look at the cause, but it wasn't a thing back then.
Right.
You didn't have this knowledge. So it was like this diet, that diet, whatever, but it wasn't, you have to work out, you have to do a hormonal or anti-inflammatory diet, which even as an adult after COVID, trying to get my health back in charge, in charge of my health, I wasn't getting any results. I was gluten-free. I was working out like crazy, 2 hours a day. I was doing everything and nothing would work until
Mm-hmm.
I went on an anti-inflammatory diet and it's like grain-free, almost like paleo, like the paleolithical or even like carnivore. So sometimes taking supplements of fiber and stuff like that because you do actually need it. But I'm so sensitive that everything for me is a hormonal disruptor. Everything. Like I get
Right.
a vegetable that was touched the wrong way or sprayed with something or anything, and it just even like oils, like the
Right.
vegetable oils, everything, it just blows me. It gives me rashes. Like it's insane. So I think, especially in America, everyone should be gluten-free and everyone should, because
Yeah.
all those things are processed in a way that is just not good for you. And people have it
Right.
in different ways. Maybe it's stress, maybe it's anxiety, maybe it's brain fog, maybe it's like acne, anything, but it just disrupts you, and it's not good for you. So
Right.
yeah, I think everything you're describing is like when I'm like high anxiety. I'm high anxiety transitioning. I'm like
Right.
menopausal.
Well, Well, I mean, that is so true. Especially about our American diet. It's, what do they say? It's the standard American diet. Sad, it is pretty sad. But at the same time, like, I feel like we have more options now. Like we're becoming more educated as a society. But it's interesting about your PCOS journey. My middle child, she has had some issues with her menstrual cycles. So I got her in to see my OBGYN because, and actually she delivered my daughter too, which is so funny. But we did a bunch of tests and lab work on her because she's like my, OBGYN, she's treating me for my perimenopausal stuff. So
Yeah.
she's like, I told her, I'm like, I don't want to put her on birth control if it's PCOS. And so she's kind of in this pre-PCOS state. There's not really a clinical diagnosis for pre-PCOS. She has some signs that maybe in a few years it could turn into PCOS. So we're treating it now
Mhm.
with diet because we're just like, I'm going to start with conservatively. Let's start with diet. We'll make some dietary changes. Like, we're doing the same thing for me. Like, my kids should have the same thing too.
Yeah.
So really just educating her differently as someone else that has a potential for PCOS. Like,
Mhm.
you need to eat your foods differently, you need to exercise differently, you need to do things a little bit differently. And she's so self-aware about that, so she's very like educated. She's like, okay, she's like me, like, let me find out all this stuff that I need to do to be an advocate for myself, so which is really good. So
Yeah, yes. I think that's very important. And the same, like all the mindfulness things are very important. It's like the reps that you train your brain for. Like
great.
it's the same thing that you do to your body. You need
Yeah.
to lift some weights, not only walk, you need to lift some weights. And then you also need to lift the weights in your brain to become more
Yeah.
emotionally resilient and smart and also deal with stress and with like navigating life, which of course there's going to be ups and downs, but at least, you're able to see the things and the solutions instead of dwelling in the
Right.
problem, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, I
So
agree with
true.
everything. But I'm like, oh my goodness, I need to prepare because that's very important, right? Like the instant gratification versus the long-term benefits
Right.
that you mentioned as well. And it's like, okay, now there's a new level.
Right. I think when I honored that transition, like, I am not like, because I had gained almost 25 pounds in about 8 months, and I'm like, this is not like me. I immediately wanted to find, how do I quickly lose this weight. But then I had to also be like, okay, my body, like, I have to be like gentle with myself
Yeah,
because my body is going through a lot of chaos right now. It's trying to figure out. So I'm not going to shame myself, because it's easy to shame yourself when you gain that weight. But then at the same time, like, my hormones are so dysregulated right now. They are keeping it up with me as much as they can. But then at the same time, like, I just had to not be ashamed of going through this. But like, once I made that decision of like, it's not going to be that quick, like, how quickly can I lose this 25 pounds? It's more like, what can I be doing today to really help my future self? And that's, like, I think, so key, because it's like, it just flips your mindset to really like looking at the long-term range of goals versus this immediate gratification.
exactly. Yes, I love that. And that goes for everything. Like just
Mhm.
it's about the journey, not about the losing the weight. It's about becoming healthy and being good for yourself and others and just regulate it and not be a hot mess with your
Right. Although you feel like you're a hot mess. It is definitely, yeah, it can be an interesting journey for sure.
Yes, I love that. So tell us what's your number one tool that you can give our audience to go from surviving to thriving in premenopause.
I think this is probably the one thing too, just recently I've kind of been observing more and more with the women I coach, is that for so many years as women, we have had our voices quieted, or maybe told that we are crazy, or maybe that, oh, you're just making this up, or just been dismissed. And so we have not been able to honor our own intuition because of other people's stories. And so we quiet our voice, quiet our intuition, women, we are so intuitive. Either we feel it in our heart or we feel it in our gut.
Yeah.
And so I would say that probably the number one thing is to honor your intuition and trust it, because it's your body knows. Your body knows more than anything. Your brain gets in the way sometimes, and it tells you not to trust that intuition.
Yeah.
Trust your intuition. Like if you are not being seen, you're not being heard, you or something just doesn't feel right in your body, trust it. Like trust your intuition and act on it. And really honor that, because I really feel like we have to, especially at this age. Like, we're in our, midlife. We need to really honor our intuition. We're pretty wise, and we need to make sure that we keep that internal gusto of like understanding ourselves, because we know ourselves the best.
Yes, that's so empowering. I love that. And I am one of those. I made peace with myself being the annoying patient.
Yeah.
I go there and I'm like, I have this, and that. And I already know I have functional medicine people that vouch for me. So no,
Mhm.
you're not gonna gaslight me. This is what's happening. And no, no, I'm not taking any birth control anymore. And no, you're not gonna give me pills for my anxiety.
And I think that's the beauty of like these younger generations are like, no, we're not tolerating this. You cannot treat us this way. We will find someone else. This doesn't seem right. Where I think Gen Xers are kind of like, we are that end of that generation of like being passed over, like, oh, this is what my doctor told me to do. So I'm going to believe them. Like, we finally are like, no, this doesn't seem right. And then the younger generations are like even more powerful in saying that. So I love that. So, but yeah, I think, our mothers, our aunts, our grandmothers were all like, oh, this is what they told us to do. So we're going to follow that. We're not going to ruffle any feathers.
Mhm.
But now we're kind of like seeing that transition of women like saying, nope, we're not going to stand for this. So,
And I love that. And thank you so much for what you do
yes,
for us. And thank you so much for being in my podcast. It was a pleasure having you.
it
And
was
I
a pleasure being here. I loved it.
and I hope you help many, many women and educate them and make them or take them to a better place in their hormonal journey.
Oh, thank you so much.